There are three somewhat similar fader functions that you can assign to a sequence in GrandMA 3, and I'm going to show you the differences between them. I have three sequences here called master, CrossFade, and temp. These are the names of the three functions we're going to be talking about, and all three of these sequences have the same data stored in them. They have a first cue with a tilt 50 and fan position and setting the lights at 100%, and then a Q2 that turns them blue. So the master fader is going to default to 100%, and what the master does is it basically limits the output of the sequence. So if I pull this fader to 0 and then back up, the lights turn on, but the fader is not controlling the movement. Instead, it basically used a go function because we started the fader from 0. And then once we start to pull it back down from 100, we get to 0, the sequence turns off. And we turn it back on again, the go function is performed again, but the fader is not impacting the fade. Now the reason why it's turning on and off when I go up and down from 0 is because of sequence settings auto start and auto stop. Auto start is what makes it turn on when you pull it from 0. So now it's not turning on. But if I hit go plus, it goes and I can limit the output. To be clear, this is only affecting dimmer output, but I can limit the output with this fader. If I take it to 0, the sequence turns off, however. So if I turn off auto stop, now I can move the fader up and down, I can turn the cue on, I can move it up and down. It does absolutely nothing besides limit the output. I go again, it turns blue, again I can limit the output, and that is how the master function works. I'm going to turn that one off, and we're going to turn our attention to crossfade. Now crossfade essentially fades the lights based on how high the fader is, and you can also go backwards. Now when you get to 100, it has finished fading the cue, so going back down will start to fade the next cue. Be aware that the individual fade times you have stored are going to impact how fast this is going to go. So, for example, in the first cue, the dimmer comes on immediately because the dimmer is stored with a fade time of 0, while the other things have a longer fade time. So whatever has the longest fade time is going to be 100%, and everything else is incremented in percentages compared to that. Now, another setting that you might be interested in referring to crossfade is a sequence setting called xfade reload. If you turn this on, turning the fader up, it does what you expect, but moving it back down, the cue turns red, and you go back down, it does nothing, and now it's reloaded so that going up fades the next cue. The final sequence function we're going to look at is temp. The temp fader does something very similar to the crossfade fader. Basically fades in and out the lights depending on how high the fader is. The difference is we'll never go to the second cue with a temp fader. The temp fader only applies to the first cue, and going back down just turns it off, even once you've reached 100.